Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking about the top 20 books I want to read in 2025. And as you guys know, when I do these videos, they're all books that I already own. There are definitely books that I want to read that are going to come out this year, which maybe I'll make a video about that, and kind of like upcoming releases that I'm excited about. But these are books that I really want to read that are on my shelf already, or they're in my Kindle. And last year I actually read 10 out of the 20. So I feel like I did okay. I did like 50%, which was pretty good. And like, I swear this year's going to be different. This year I'm going to read more of them, but you never know. In the comments below, I want you guys to tell me like what your guys are looking forward to reading this year from your shelf. Like, what books have you owned for a while that you really want to get to this year? Did you get any books for Christmas that you're really excited to read in 2025? Let me know in the comments. I'd be really curious. And also let me know, out of all of these books, what book you think I should read first, or what I should prioritize out of this list. But I also want to mention that I'm not going to say like the deep synopsis to all these books. I'm just going to tell you why I personally want to read them and why I want to get to them this year. And sometimes that includes a synopsis and sometimes it doesn't. This is the list of 20 books that I want to read in 2025. So the first book on this list is a book that I got kind of at the end of last year, and it is Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver. So this is kind of a split book. The people that love it absolutely love it, and the people that were just like not into it were really not into it. I think it just kind of depends on the person. But I'm really interested in this. I think it's about two serial killers that fall in love with each other, and I think that sounds really, really interesting. I have no idea what to expect. I think this is kind of like a dark romance, or it's kind of going into the darker romance area, but not like super, super dark, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like right on the cusp, but I think this sounds fun. It sounds unique. It sounds interesting. Okay, so the next book on this list is Flowers for Algernon. I got this last year, and this made it onto a couple TBRs, but I never got around to it for whatever reason. But this is just a classic. Like, we all know, we've all heard of this book, and I think it sounds so up my alley. I think it sounds so, so interesting. It definitely has to do with like psychology and all that kind of thing, and I love that kind of stuff. So this is an interesting book about a man that was born with a really low IQ, and there's these doctors that are trying to see if they can do this experiment on him to raise his IQ, and they also do it on a rat named Algernon. And what ends up happening is this man's IQ ends up becoming higher than the doctors that started this, you know, process on him and the rat. And then what he starts to realize is the rat deteriorates, and I think he dies, which he then has to face his own death or something like that. I think it's something along those lines. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it sounds so interesting. It feels like it's going to be a really hard-hitting read. Very like, you know, existential probably is what I'm guessing. So the next one is a book that has been on my radar for a long time. I think this came out right around when Shark Heart came out, and I remember that really clearly because I remember seeing the Shark Heart cover and this cover at the same time and loving both covers and wanting to read both of the books because the covers just struck me as so gorgeous. And I did read Shark Heart, and this is the other one, Chlorine. And this is by Jade Song, and this is about a woman who wants to be a mermaid, and she will do anything in her power to finally be able to live in the water as a mermaid. And I think it sounds super interesting. I don't really know like the plot behind it, like how she becomes a mermaid or whatever, but I think it sounds super interesting. And this cover is just so cool. I love the colors and everything. And when I was younger, I really wanted to be a mermaid, and I remember every single time I had the opportunity to make a wish, you know, with like candles or like throwing a coin into a fountain. Every single time I would wish that I was a mermaid. That is what I wanted to be more than anything in the world. And then I remember the age when I realized that being a mermaid actually did not sound fun at all, and I actually would hate it. And so I think this book is going to be interesting because maybe it's going to dive into what it's actually like, or what it would actually be like to be a mermaid. Would it actually be as great as you think it would be? That would be a really interesting book about a girl that becomes a mermaid after really wanting to be a mermaid and then realizing how horrible being a mermaid is. But I think this book sounds really good. That is third on the list. Next up is The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata. This is a book that I've been wanting to read for a while, and I really want to try Mariana Zapata because I've heard great things about her books, but she's a long-winded romance writer, which means she just writes really long romances. And I don't love long romances just because I feel like romances oftentimes don't need to be super, 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 super long. I'm a little bit unsure if I'm gonna like her as an author, but we're gonna try because everyone that reads her books tends to really like her. Like, she just writes really good romances. So I'm excited for this one. This is about a girl who is an assistant to like a football team, and she falls in love with one of the football players, the Wall of Winnipeg, and that's about as much as I know. So the next book is one that I actually have as a graphic novel and I have as a regular novel, so I don't know which one I'm going to read first. I think I'm going to read the actual novel first, but that's Coraline, and this is my special edition of Coraline, and it has like the sprayed edges. It has like watercolor artwork inside. It's just a really, really pretty edition, but I just really love the cover. And I'm so excited for this. Coraline's one of my favorite movies. I just love it, but I do wonder sometimes if the reason I love the movie so much is because of the vibes and like the music and the animation. Like there's so much about the movie Coraline that I like other than just the story. So it'll be interesting to see if I love the book as much as I love the movie. I don't know, we'll see. But this is definitely one that I want to get to and kind of just see if I like it. So next is one that you guys are going to laugh at. You guys are going to be like, Cara, if you do not read this year, literally you need to unhaul that book. And I agree. Like if this book does not get read this year, there's a huge problem because this was on my top 24 I want to read in 2024 and it was on pretty much every single one of my TBRs and I never freaking read it. And I'm like, how did that even happen? And that's Pen Pal. So I want to read this. Everyone says I'm going to like it and I keep wanting to read it. Every single time I put it on my TBR, I'm like, I'm definitely going to get to that one this month. And then I never do. Like, what the heck? So this one is definitely going to be read. The next TBR that I put this on, I promise I will read it first. I promise. That's my goal. So Pen Pal is on the list again this year and this is going to get read. So the next book is one that I've had on my shelf for probably like 6 years or 5 years even. I don't even know. I got this so long ago and I've been wanting, the reason I've never unhauled it is because I still want to read it. And so it's one of those books that just keeps sitting there and sitting there and sitting there. And you know, you'd think, well, why don't you just unhaul it if you're never going to read it? And it's like, no, but I want to read it. That's the thing. So hopefully this year I get to it. And that is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. So I read An Enchantment of Ravens and I really liked that book. I think I gave it like a 4-star rating, which is pretty good for a, you know, standalone fantasy. And I've heard really good things about this. It's about books, it's magical, it's whimsical, it's enchanting, it has a romance in it. And the fact that I haven't read it is just crazy to me. I don't know why. It is YA, and I've said this in videos before that I love standalones and duologies. They're like my 2 favorite ways to read fantasy, and so the fact that I haven't read this to me is bizarre. So I really want to get to this year at some point. I think it's going to be a really fun book to read, and I think I'm really going to like it. The next one is one I already talked about in a past video, and that is Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. So my goal was to start this series this year, not to finish it, not to read like all the series or half the series even. If I just read one of the books, that's all I want to do. And I love Sarah J. Maas, you guys know this. I didn't love Crescent City quite as much as I loved Court of Thorns and Roses. Like Crescent City to me, the first book was good. I really liked the first book, but the books kind of just kept getting worse. So hopefully, I've heard amazing things about this series. Hopefully I like it as much as I love A Court of Thorns and Roses, but I really just want to start this series. So I put Assassin's Blade on this list, and if I continue to read more of the series this year, then that's great, but if I don't, that's fine too. So the next book was a cover buy for me, but I also had a goal to read more horror and more like horror novellas, and this is a horror book. It's not a novella, but part of the reason I bought this and really, really wanted this book is because I love the cover and I love this artist. So this is Slewfoot by Brom, and if you didn't know, Brom does all the art and stuff in his books and on the covers and stuff, but he also writes the books. And this is like a very witchy horror book, and I think it sounds really, really good, and I've heard really, really good things about this. So not only is the cover just absolutely stunning, I really, really, really want to like the book. I love books with art in it. I think books should do it more often. Isn't this so cool? I love that. But yeah, Brom does all of his art in this, and I think it's so cool. So the next book that I really want to read is The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. Now this is one of those books that I really, really hope I like, but I also think that there's a chance that I won't like it, which is interesting that it's one of my top books I want to read. This is just one of those books where I know that I could love it or I could hate it, just depending on how boring it is. Because I do feel like sometimes cozy fantasy can be a little bit boring because they're cozy and it's just kind of like characters, you know, enjoying the little things in life and doing kind of the mundane and all of that kind of thing. So hopefully I like this. And the fact that there's a cat on here, and I heard also that I think she talks to her cat, I think. So it's like a talking cat, which I'm sold. Okay, so next up on this list is the one and only Caraval. So this was on my top 24 books I wanted to read in 2024 because I absolutely loved Once Upon a Broken Heart in 2023. And so I really wanted to read this series, and then I just never got around to it in 2024. And this book is one of those, or this series I should say, is one of those series that's like either loved or not. And a lot of people that really love Once Upon a Broken Heart don't love this one quite as much. And so I'm a little worried, but I loved Stephanie Garber's writing in Once Upon a Broken Heart. There's a lot of reasons why I like that series, and it wasn't just because of the characters. So hopefully, because I loved her writing style, and the way that she plotted that book series, I will like this one as well, and it will kind of have the same vibes. I really want to get to this one though, even if I don't get to the rest of the series and I just get to this first one, that's fine, but I just want to at least try it out. And then we have this one. I have a feeling that I may or may not get to this one. This is one of those books where it's kind of like, are you gonna have time? I mean, I already have a lot of fantasy on this list right now already, and I kind of feel like I don't read a ton of fantasy in a year. Like, I do read fantasy, but not a ton of it. And so the likelihood of me getting to every single one of the fantasy books on this list is probably unlikely unless I go through like a massive fantasy phase. But this one I still want to read, and I'm putting it on this list because there's a possibility. I just don't know for certain. So that is Phantasma by Kaylee Smith, and Travis got me this for Christmas actually, and I asked for this for Christmas, and I've heard amazing things about this. There has been so much hype on this book, and I've just heard that everyone who reads it ends up really, really liking it. I haven't heard too much negativity in regards to this book, so I'm really excited to read it. Hopefully people aren't steering me wrong with this one because it is a chunker. It's kind of a chunker. How many pages is it? 500 pages about. So that is on this list. Hopefully I like it. Next up is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This was on my 2024 list as well, and the thing about it is I didn't end up getting to this, but I keep seeing this book pop up. Like, this book has been out for a while, but people keep talking about it, and every single time I see somebody read this, they love it. And so it's not one of those books that's just like fading into the background where people kind of stop talking about it. Like, people keep on talking about it and keep on raving about it. And so I feel like I have to read it because it just keeps getting talked about. And I'm just curious about it. And I know this book is a little bit hard to explain. It's kind of weird, kind of alternate reality type of vibes where things don't make full sense. So I'm kind of expecting it to be maybe a little confusing, and I think that's maybe why I haven't picked this up, is because I know that it's going to take maybe a little bit extra brain power, and I'm kind of like, well, what if it's confusing? Like, do I really feel like being confused right now? Like, I don't know. So if you guys know anything about Piranesi and you're like, it's not confusing, like, you'll be fine, just read it, then let me know in the comments, because I want to know if I'm going to love this or if I'm going to hate it. And I don't know why I have it in my head that for some reason this is like a hard book to understand, but in my head, that's what I think. I don't know why. Next up is Rhapsodic by Laura Thalassa. So this book was on my January TBR, and I haven't started it yet. I'm currently reading a different book from that TBR, but this is on it. Maybe I get to it this month. I don't know if I will, but if not, I can always put it on a future TBR. It has to be read. I have to read it at some point. So hopefully this one gets read in 2025. Next up is a book that I have on my Kindle, and it is Lights Out. I don't know who the author is of this one, but I saw Jody, or Vanilla Moon. She just read this and she thought it was so much fun. She says it's kind of like a dark romance, and she said it's not like really dark though. It's kind of like on that cusp where if you just want to like dip your toes into dark romance, then that one is a great one to kind of start with. And that's kind of why I want to read this one, because I don't know how into like really dark romance that I am, you know what I mean? So that is on the list. And then also Blake Crouch's Run. So this is an older book by Blake Crouch, and this is also on my Kindle. It's been on my Kindle for a while. I love Blake Crouch. I loved Recursion and I love Dark Matter. Upgrade wasn't my favorite book by him, but he's kind of been like re-advertising this book, and it's kind of like re-released sort of, and he's like got a new cover and everything for it. So I have a feeling that this book is going to be good, and I think, you know, the reason he chose this book to kind of like re-release and kind of re-push onto people, there's probably a reason, and it's probably because it's good. So I do want to read more Blake Crouch because I just have so much fun with his books. I always have. And so I think that this one is going to be the next one that I end up reading by him. And again, it's on my Kindle, but I think it's going to be really good. So the next book on my top 20 list is Carmilla, and this is by, I don't know who it's by, but this is a classic, and this is also on my January TBR. Haven't gotten to it yet, but I really want to get to this at some point this year. Again, it's like a short novella, and this predates Dracula, so it's like the first vampire novel or something like that. I don't know, but I really want to read this. I think it's going to be so good, and if I don't get to it in January, I think I want to get to it in like October when it's kind of a little bit more spooky. But I'm excited for this. I kind of read like the first couple of pages, and it's actually like I really like the writing, and I think it's going to be just a really fun book to dive into. And then also So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison. This is also my January TBR. So I have 3 books on my January TBR that are actually on this list. So this is So Thirsty. This is about a girl that gets turned into a vampire in the modern world, and kind of like her journey experiencing vampirism as like a regular modern woman. and I think that sounds super, super interesting. I don't know how the ratings are on this, but Travis got me this for Christmas, and I am so excited for this. I just think it sounds so fun and so interesting. And then we have Spark of the Everflame. I want to start this series again. I don't have to finish the series in a year, but I do want to give this a go and see if I like it. This is also a book that Travis got me for Christmas. It has these beautiful end pages. I don't know if all of them have these end pages, but I think it's gorgeous, and it has like this beautiful embossing on the cover. I don't know if you guys can see that. So pretty. This had so much hype in 2024, like so much, and so I was so excited when Travis got me this for Christmas because I really want to give it a try. Hopefully I like it. Hopefully it lives up to the hype. I'm hoping. And then last but not least is a book that kind of hits a goal for me. One of my goals was to read more horror novellas, and this is one that I have had on my shelf for a little while. This is called Fever Dream by Samantha Schweblin. And this is a little novella, and it is horror. And as you can tell, like, the writing on the pages is very short. Like, it's a very like small, little compact book. And so I feel like this is going to be really easy to read. So I think this has to do with like alternate realities. I think it has maybe something to do with ghosts. I think it has like some psychological aspects to it. But this is another one of those books that sounds kind of like time bendy, maybe a little bit confusing, like what did I just read type of book. So we'll see, but this is going to be on my list for like horror novellas, and hopefully I get to this just so I can, like, you know, mark off some of my goals that I had for this year. This is going to be one of those books that counts towards that goal. So that is it, you guys, for my top 20 books that I want to read in 2024. Hopefully I do better than 50% this year. I'm really hoping that I do. Let me know in the comments below which ones you think that I should get to first, and if there's any books that you think that I'm going to love that's on this list. Also in the comments below, let me know what your top 5 books that you want to read this year that are on your shelf that you maybe haven't gotten to yet, or you're just kind of like putting off, but you really finally want to get to them in 2025. I'd be so curious to know. And I think that is it, you guys. So I will talk to you in my next video, and I'll see you guys soon.